When did your mentor die and leave you a nonprofit that's about to collapse? I don't even know where to start. I'm sitting in my beat-up 2018 Honda Civic in the parking lot of the Trader Joe's on 5th Street, and my stomach is actively trying to revolt against the Talenti gelato I stress-ate 5 minutes ago. I just found out my father figure, the guy who basically raised me, didn't just die. He left me his entire stake in the nonprofit I work at, which is great, but also the entire organization is currently imploding because I discovered a gigantic steaming pile of cheating, and honestly I might be next. This happened Tuesday at 11:47 a.m. Let me back up. Hi, I'm Stephen Fitzgerald, 24M, and yes, I am a chronic worrier. I worry about the $43.67 grocery bill. I worry about running out of PTO. I only have 3.5 hours left. I worry that my iPhone 14 battery health is already down to 89%. And lately I've been worrying about the rent for apartment 3B, which is $1,247 a month, and I could barely swing my half. Everything is a low-grade, constant hum of financial and existential dread. I work at The Good Loop, a nonprofit dedicated to community outreach and art programs. It sounds cute, but it's mostly 8 Zoom meetings a day and trying to manage people who think they are saving the world while only doing the bare minimum. My life was pretty beige until 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, my mentor, Mr. Harrison, died suddenly. He was the founder of The Good Loop, a total legend, and he was the closest thing I had to a dad since my actual father took off when I was 7. I was devastated. I was ugly crying into my pillow watching Disney Plus while eating leftover pizza for breakfast, thinking about how I was going to manage organizing his memorial service while also meeting my KPIs. I know I am a monster, but the work never stops. The drama started last Friday. That's when Mr. Harrison's lawyer, a very serious woman named Ms. Chen, called me into the office on the 5th floor. I had just grabbed a lukewarm coffee from Starbucks, trying to mentally prepare for a budget meeting that was giving me hives. Ms. Chen sat me down and basically dropped a financial bomb on my head. She said, and I quote, "Mr. Harrison revised his will 6 months ago, Stephen. He has bequeathed you his entire remaining share and ownership interest in The Good Loop." I wait, what? What are you saying? I literally thought she was joking. I did the thing where you just smile and nod while internally screaming. I stammered out B, but he told me he was leaving it to his nephew. His nephew decided to pursue a career in artisanal cheeses, apparently, Ms. Chen said, completely straight-faced. This means, Stephen, you are now the majority owner and effectively the new executive director, pending board approval, which frankly is a formality. I felt my stomach drop to the floor. I wanted to throw up the gas station coffee it had earlier. Me, running a nonprofit, I am 24, I still ask my mom how to load the dishwasher sometimes. I was reeling. My heart was racing so hard I thought my Apple Watch was going to explode. This wasn't just a surprise inheritance. This was suddenly having the key to the entire organization, including all the books and financial records. This meant access to the deepest, darkest corners of The Good Loop's inner workings. That evening, I couldn't sleep, obviously. I was wired, exhausted, but totally unable to shut down. I had $85 in my checking account and suddenly I owned a nonprofit. I did what any chronic worrier would do. I dove into the spreadsheets. I opened up the massive financial ledger, the one Mr. Harrison insisted only he and the operations manager Denise had access to. Let me introduce you to the board, the people who make my life hell. First, there's Denise Ahmed, 63F. She's the operations manager and basically thinks she's running the place. Denise is one of those classic helicopter parents. She talks about her son Jason every 5 minutes. He's 38 and still lives at home. She calls him her mama's boy and excuses his every failure. She's been at The Good Loop for 15 years. Then there is Sarah O'Brien, 44F. She heads the PR team. Sarah is a parent who compares. Her entire identity revolves around how much better her daughter, Chloe, is doing than everyone else's kids. Chloe got into an Ivy League, she has the Peloton, she drives a Tesla, she only drinks filtered water, blah blah blah. Sarah is ruthless, obsessed with appearances, and a total social climber. And finally, Stella Price, 56F. Stella runs the volunteer coordination. She is, to put it mildly, intense. She is a religious extremist parent. Everything she does is framed through the lens of divine intervention and judgment. She talks about God's plan constantly and judges everyone for everything, from the length of their skirts to the type of coffee they drink. Mine is worldly, apparently. She has 3 kids, all of whom are either missionaries or living in a compound somewhere. These 3 women are a nightmare trio. They run the board meetings like a high school clique and basically view me as the intern who fetches them Diet Coke. Now that I had the master key, I started looking at the accounts. I was specifically looking for discrepancies in the capital improvement budget. We recently had a major issue with a burst pipe. I had to shell out $85 for a plumber to even look at my own apartment sink last month, so I was hyper-aware of plumbing costs. The Good Loop had paid a whopping $3,400 for what seemed like a minor repair to a water heater in the basement. Seemed high, but whatever. Then I noticed the reimbursements. Denise Mama's boy was constantly filing expense reports for office supplies and client gifts. Totally normal, except the receipts were consistently from places like Bloomingdale's and an expensive boutique bakery downtown. One receipt dated October 2023 was for $347 at a high-end menswear shop. Office supplies? Really? I pulled up the last 6 months of her expense reports. They were full of weird transactions. Multiple $200 withdrawals coded as petty cash for events, which we absolutely never use cash for. I mean, we are a nonprofit. We use Zelle or PayPal for everything to keep a paper trail. The math wasn't mathing, you know. I spent Wednesday and Thursday in a fugue state, subsisting on 3 hours of sleep and leftover Ben and Jerry's. I couldn't eat solid food. I was so focused, I barely noticed the 27 missed calls from my mom and the fact that I had 47 unread Slack notifications. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. It wasn't just Denise. Sarah, parent who compares, had a similar pattern, but hers was far more subtle. She wasn't doing cash withdrawals. She was using the company card for what looked like personal travel. The system labeled it donor outreach trips, but the dates aligned perfectly with every single one of her daughter Chloe's college breaks. One donor trip to Colorado in January, complete with hotel receipts from a ski resort and rental car fees. I checked the company calendar. No donors in Colorado, and the hotel. It was the exact same resort Sarah had posted pictures of Chloe skiing at on her Instagram story, captioned, "Proud Mom Moment." And GL, the audacity was incredible. Then Stella, religious extremist parent, hers was the most twisted. She was using the discretionary fund for crisis intervention. This fund is supposed to help community members who face sudden emergencies like fire or job loss. Stella was writing large checks, we're talking $5,000 to $10,000, to various small, seemingly random religious organizations. One was called the Path of True Light. I googled it. It was registered at a P.O. box in rural Ohio. Further digging into the organization's public tax filings showed that its director was a man named David Price, her middle son, the one who was supposed to be a missionary in Africa. He wasn't in Africa, he was running a potentially fake charity funded by our nonprofit. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my cracked screen Android phone. I was literally shaking, full body shaking. I felt the chest tightness that means I'm about to spiral into a full-blown panic attack. This wasn't just poor accounting. This was embezzlement. This was fraud. They weren't just terrible coworkers. They were actively cheating the organization and the community we were supposed to serve. They were using a nonprofit for personal gain, covering expensive trips for Chloe, buying menswear for Jason, and funding their son's potential tax-evading organization. And I, the chronic worrier, the 24-year-old idiot who just wanted to pay his $1,247 rent on time, was now the executive director who had uncovered it. I couldn't talk to anyone about this. My friends would just say, "Girl, what the fuck?" which wouldn't help. My mom would demand I quit immediately and come home to Westfield. I had to confront them, but I couldn't confront them individually. That would just lead to gaslighting and denial. I had to hit them all at once. So I scheduled an emergency board meeting for Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. I knew I couldn't wait. The tension was making me break out in stress acne, and I hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days. The meeting started exactly on time. I sat at the head of the long oak table, laptop open, the spreadsheets loaded, my palms sweating so much I was worried I'd short-circuit the keyboard. Denise, Sarah, and Stella were sitting opposite me looking annoyed. They thought this meeting was about the new office coffee machine. "Stephen, dear, I really needed to be home by 6:00, Sarah said, checking her Apple Watch. "Chloe has a virtual study group tonight, and I promised I'd make her homemade focaccia." "This won't take long, Sarah," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It sounded like I was trying to talk through a mouthful of cotton wool. "This is about the financial audit I conducted over the past 4 days. Denise immediately stiffened. "An audit? Why, Stephen? We just had our quarterly review." "A review of our current expenditures, specifically the operations and discretionary funds," I clarified, clicking the presentation forward. The first slide was a giant aggregated chart of unauthorized spending. Stella immediately frowned, her arms crossed over her chest. "If this is about the petty cash, Denise, I told you that new envelope system was worldly and irresponsible." "It's about more than petty cash, Stella," I said, pointing the laser pointer, which was shaking slightly at the screen. "Let's start with October 2023. Denise, can you explain the $347 expense coded as office furniture delivery fee at this high-end menswear store?" Denise's face went from pale to a patchy red. That must be an error, Stephen, a vendor mistake. It was paid on the corporate card linked to your name, Denise. And it was exactly 1 week before your son Jason's 38th birthday," I added, my voice getting stronger. "Is that really a mistake, or was that a birthday gift for your mama's boy?" "You are being dramatic, Stephen. You're too sensitive. This is slander," Denise cried, slamming her hand on the table. I ignored her, clicking to the next slide, which showed Sarah's expenses. "Sarah, you logged 3 donor outreach trips in the last 6 months to Colorado, Napa Valley, and Miami. These are the receipts for hotels, ski lift passes, and rental cars." I put up a screenshot of her Instagram story, Chloe in ski gear, the hotel logo clearly visible in the background. "Was this organization business, or was this funding a vacation for your daughter, the Ivy League wunderkind?" Sarah stared at the screen, jaw dropped. "How dare you invade my privacy? That is irrelevant. Those were strategic scouting missions." "Scouting missions with 0 documented meetings and receipts for 3 nights at a 5-star hotel in Aspen in the middle of January," I shot back. "The math isn't mathing, Sarah," Stella interrupted, leaning forward with sudden manic energy. "This is what happens when you let the young and inexperienced run the house of God. These worldly possessions are distracting you all from the true path." "Speaking of paths, Stella," I said, clicking to the final slide. This slide was simply the check stubs, all over $5,000, written to the Path of True Light. "Can you explain this series of large donations to a religious organization registered at a P.O. box, an organization whose director is your son, David Price?" Silence. The air in the room got thick. You could hear the faint sound of traffic from Fifth Avenue and the hum of the fluorescent lights. Stella didn't get angry like the others. She got cold, her eyes narrowed. "Those funds, Stephen, were used to sow the seeds of righteousness. They were used for God's true work, not for your frivolous art programs. They were used for fraud, Stella. You funneled tens of thousands of dollars out of a crisis fund meant for our community members directly into your family's potentially fraudulent organization." I took a deep, shaky breath. "This is cheating. This is embezzlement. And I have the documents here proving that the total unauthorized spending in the last 8 months alone exceeds $60,000. Denise stood up abruptly, nearly knocking her chair over. "You little boy, you have no idea what you're doing. Mr. Harrison would never allow this humiliation. You're overreacting." Mr. Harrison didn't need to allow it, Denise, I said, leaning over the table, finally letting the pure, unadulterated rage take over. Because Mr. Harrison left me the organization, I am the owner now. I found the cheating and I will be reporting all of you to the police and the proper oversight committees tomorrow morning. Sarah went white. Stella just smiled a weird, creepy, knowing smile that made my skin crawl. You think you've won, Stephen? Sarah spat, snatching her purse. You think you can just step into Mr. Harrison's shoes and make these decisions? You think those spreadsheets are everything? They are enough to get you all arrested, I said firmly. Denise started yelling, I've been here 15 years, I deserve that money. I knew something was off the moment that old fool started giving you attention. Stella finally spoke, and her voice was quiet, which was somehow more terrifying than the yelling. You shouldn't have been poking around, Stephen. Some things are best left undisturbed. They all stormed out, muttering threats and slamming the door. I sat there, shaking, utterly alone in the office, the glow of the fraudulent spreadsheets illuminating my face. I had done it. I had pulled the trigger. I had exposed the cheating and the fraud. I felt sick, terrified, but also weirdly relieved. I was checking my credit card balance, $347 due, and trying to figure out if I could survive until payday on gas station coffee when my laptop dinged. It was a new email notification. It was from Ms. Chen, the lawyer. The subject line was ominous, urgent follow-up regarding Mr. Harrison's estate. I opened it, heart-pounding, assuming it was some legal mumbo-jumbo about the paperwork. It wasn't. The email was short, formal, and devastating. Stephen, I apologize for the speed of this contact, but during the final review of Mr. Harrison's assets for the probate court, an administrative error was discovered regarding the disposition of the organization's property. Specifically, Mr. Harrison had executed a codicil last Tuesday at 11:47 a.m., just hours before his passing. This codicil stipulated a contingency concerning his majority ownership. While your inheritance is secure, there is a clause that allows for a temporary co-executive management structure. Mr. Harrison stipulated that in the event of any organizational upheaval or moral conflict reported by his original trustees, Denise Ahmed, Sarah O'Brien, and Stella Price, a period of supervised visitation must be put into immediate effect. The court has approved their joint petition this afternoon, citing the immediate and destabilizing conflict you reported. Until a neutral party can be appointed, the three of them, Denise, Sarah, and Stella, are to serve as your court-appointed supervisors. They will have complete oversight of all your management decisions, financial access, and daily activities within the good loop. They are waiting for you at the office right now to begin this immediate period of supervised visitation. I reread the last sentence 3 times. They are waiting for you at the office right now. I felt faint. Supervised visitation. I just exposed them as criminals and now they are my supervisors. This is some sick joke. Mr. Harrison, the man who cared about the mission more than anything, somehow set up a system where the 3 people actively bleeding the nonprofit dry could supervise the new owner who exposed their cheating. I grabbed my laptop and ran. I didn't care about locking up or turning off the lights. I burst out of the office on the 5th floor, took the elevator down, and jumped into my Civic. I drove straight here to the Trader Joe's parking lot because I literally cannot go home yet and I can't go back to the office. I was done, just done. I exposed fraud and embezzlement and now the embezzlers are my bosses. They are going to make my life a living hell. They will bankrupt the organization out of spite. They will fire me even though I technically own the place. I just checked my work email again from the safety of my Civic. I have 3 new emails, all from Denise. The first one, sent 5 minutes ago, says, "See you tomorrow, Stephen, 8 a.m. sharp. Bring me a coffee. I like it black like your future." The second, "We will be reviewing all of your personal Venmo transactions from the last 6 months for professional ethics." The third, "I've changed the office Wi-Fi password. You're too expensive to keep around." I'm shaking again. I don't know what to do. I have $85 left and 3 people who just tried to steal $60,000 are now legally in charge of making sure I don't destabilize the organization. Someone please tell me I'm not crazy. What the actual fuck do I do now? They are coming for me and I have nothing left to fight them with except those spreadsheets. But they are supervising the spreadsheets now. I need advice. I need an army. I need a better car. I just realized I left my good mug at the office. And my keys, I'm locked out of my own inheritance and the cheaters are sitting on the throne waiting for me. I can't go in there. I can't. They are waiting. I'm literally going to throw up. I'm still in the Civic. It smells faintly of stale gelato and existential panic. I tried calling Ms. Chen, the lawyer, 3 times, but it went straight to voicemail. TBH, I probably sounded like a drowning rat, which is why she's ignoring me. She's probably sitting in her giant fancy office drinking expensive champagne and laughing about the chaos she just unleashed on the 24-year-old idiot who now owns a failing nonprofit. I realized I didn't just leave my good mug, the one that says world's okayest boss. I left my apartment key attached to the office keychain. So even if I could summon the sheer willpower to drive home, I would be sleeping in the Trader Joe's parking lot anyway. The irony of being locked out of both my home and my inheritance is actually hilarious in a dark, gut-wrenching way. I looked at those emails again. Black like your future. Reviewing all your personal Venmo transactions. Change the office Wi-Fi password. They weren't just going to run the nonprofit into the ground, they were going to systematically dismantle me piece by piece. They were coming for my professionalism, my finances, and probably my soul. I finally called my best friend Alex. Alex, 25M, is a data analyst and possibly the only person who can match my anxiety levels, but he channels it into spreadsheets, which is helpful. "Stephen, I told you to ignore strange emails after 8 p.m., Alex answered, clearly annoyed because it was 9:30 p.m. Alex, they are my supervisors, I whispered into the phone, clutching the steering wheel. Who, your new boss? Yeah, that happens. No, Alex, Denise, Sarah, and Stella, the ones I just exposed as embezzlers. They are now my court-appointed supervisors because Mr. Harrison apparently loved psychological warfare and added a contingency clause about moral conflict reported by his original trustees. There was silence on the other end, long enough that I thought the call dropped. Wait, Alex finally said, and his voice was low and dangerous. Are you saying that the 3 financial criminals you were about to report to the IRS and the police are now legally in charge of supervising you because you created a conflict? Yes, I squeaked. It's called supervised visitation. Alex started laughing. It wasn't a nice laugh. It was a manic, slightly hysterical laugh. That is the single most deranged thing I have ever heard. That's like giving the wolves the keys to the chicken coop and telling the lead chicken he needs to prove he's not disturbing the peace. I know, I wailed. And Denise wants me to bring her coffee tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I don't even have my keys, Alex. I can't go back there. Alex, bless his heart, switched from hysterical laughter to strategic planner mode instantly. Okay, deep breaths. You are not going to jail and you are not serving them coffee, he instructed. First, you need a safe place to sleep. Come crash here. Second, you need to go back for your keys, but you can't go in blind. You need a shield. And 3, we are calling Ms. Chen's firm first thing in the morning and demanding a full explanation of this codicil. If Mr. Harrison was of sound mind, there had to be a reason for this insane clause. So I drove to Alex's apartment. I slept terribly. I dreamed I was running a nonprofit solely dedicated to artisanal cheeses while Sarah kept asking me if the brie was organic. The next day, coffee and confrontation. I woke up at 6 a.m. I had 3 more emails from Denise demanding various impossible reports by noon. She was enjoying this way too much. Alex drove me back downtown. He waited in the Civic outside the office building, refusing to come in but texting me every 5 seconds with inspirational messages like, "They can't legally eat you, and if Stella talks about God's plan, remind her that God also invented auditors." I took the elevator up to the 5th floor. I felt like I was walking into a firing squad. When I opened the door to the good loop, everything was different. The air felt heavy. Main office space, usually filled with the gentle click-clack of keyboards and the faint smell of microwaved leftovers, was silent. The 3 of them were sitting in the conference room again, but this time the door was wide open like they wanted everyone to see their glorious return. Denise was already sipping something out of a massive thermos, Sarah was meticulously polishing her nails, and Stella was reading a gigantic, leather-bound Bible that looked like it weighed 5 pounds. I walked straight to my desk. I grabbed my key ring, it was tucked under my monitor and my good mug. My heart was pounding, but Alex's stupid texts were looping in my brain. They can't legally eat you. I walked toward the conference room door. I didn't knock, I just stopped in the doorway. Good morning, I said, trying to make my voice sound normal, not like a terrified 12-year-old. Denise looked up, smirking. Stephen, on time, very good. Did you bring my coffee? I did not, I said, leaning against the door frame. Because I am the majority owner and executive director, and I will not be running errands for my employees, even the ones currently under investigation for embezzlement. Sarah snorted. Oh, the little boy found his backbone, how cute. Actually, I came to clarify the terms of this, quote, supervised visitation, I continued, ignoring Sarah. I spoke with Ms. Chen this morning. A total lie, but I needed them off balance. She clarified that the codicil stipulates that the board trustees supervise my executive transition and ensure organizational stability following the conflict. Stella slammed her Bible shut, making me jump. And you, Stephen, are the embodiment of conflict. You destabilized everything with your worldly accusations. No, Stella, I countered, looking her straight in the eye, which was physically hard to do. I found $60,000 missing. That is destabilization. The codicil, however, does not grant you the authority to lock me out of the Wi-Fi, demand personal Venmo reviews, or force me to serve you hot beverages. Denny's smug look started to crack. We are supervising your professional ethics, Stephen, and that requires transparency. Where did that $45 Zelle payment to Alex for rent go? I rolled my eyes. That went to Alex for rent, Denise, because I pay rent. Something I imagine Jason doesn't have to worry about since he lives at home and you buy him $347 suits on the company dime. That got her. She was furious, her face turning that patchy red again. You will show respect. I have been here 15 years. You are nothing but an overgrown intern. I am the owner, I repeated, channeling every action movie hero it ever watched. And I have retained legal counsel who is currently reviewing the evidence and the codicil. If your supervision extends beyond the scope of organizational stability and enters the realm of harassment, my lawyer will be in contact. Another massive lie. Alex's cousin is a paralegal and gave me 20 minutes of free advice that basically boiled down to, they are legally right, but bluffing is free. I felt the high of that small confrontation. I hadn't stammered, I hadn't cried, I had stood my ground. You can sit here and talk about supervision all you want, I finished, pointing to my office. But I have access to the master ledger and I know exactly what you all stole. Unless you want me to hand those spreadsheets over to the IRS today, you will allow me to run the organization and keep your supervision limited to organizational stability. I suggest you start by providing receipts for every single expense from the last quarter, not just the ones I highlighted. I walked away and closed the door to my small office. I didn't slam it because I am still a chronic worrier and hate loud noises, but I closed it firmly. Then I leaned against the door, pulled out my phone, and texted Alex. I bluffed and IT worked. I need real lawyer now, please. Hash the messy middle. 2 weeks of terror, so it's been 2 weeks since the great conference room showdown. The atmosphere in the office is toxic, like physically toxic. I think I've developed a constant low-grade fever just from the stress. The supervised visitation is pure, unadulterated hell. Denise sits in her office with the door open, occasionally yelling things like, "Stephen, did you remember to file the quarterly utility reports? Or are you too busy zelling your friend's money for rent?" Sarah started attending my morning check-ins with the PR team, offering absolutely zero valuable input, but constantly comparing my management style to her daughter Chloe's internship at Goldman Sachs. Chloe organizes her team meetings efficiently, Stephen. She uses a proprietary AI platform. She certainly doesn't stand around wondering if the post-its are gluten-free, Shed remarked, completely missing the point of the meeting. Stella is the worst. She literally follows me sometimes. If I go to the break room to heat up my sad container of leftovers, she's there, reading the Bible and sighing dramatically. "Are you nourishing your temple, Stephen?" she asked yesterday as I ate my lukewarm pesto pasta. "Or are you consuming food that promotes an unholy lifestyle? Remember, your body is a vessel for true light." "It's just pasta, Stella," I mumbled. "Just pasta, yet a worldly expenditure when the crisis fund needs every penny," she countered. They tried to block every single decision I made. I tried to hire a new intern to handle the social media. We desperately need help, and they vetoed it, claiming I was overspending on non-essential ephemeral workers. The key, I realized, was that they were banking on my fear. They knew I was terrified of instability. They knew I was worried about the law. But they were equally terrified of those spreadsheets reaching the authorities. The $60,000 I found was just the tip of the iceberg, NGL. I kept digging at night back at Alex's place, fueled by anxiety and cheap instant coffee. I found a massive paper trail linking the Path of True Light, Stella's son's fake charity, to 3 different shell organizations, all receiving small grants from the Good Loop over the last 3 years, totaling nearly $150,000. This wasn't just embezzlement, this was organized tax fraud. I took the paralegal's advice and then went a step further, draining my already pitiful savings account for a consultation with a real lawyer specializing in nonprofit law. The consultation was $400 and I cried a little paying the bill. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Davis, looked over the codicil. "Mr. Harrison was brilliant or vindictive or both," she said. "The codicil is valid. It was executed properly hours before his death. He knew these 3 were trouble, but he also likely knew you, Stephen, would panic and try to blow the whistle immediately, thereby destabilizing the entire nonprofit overnight. I felt my heart sink. So he set me up to fail?" "No," Ms. Davis shook her head. "He set up a trap. He used their own greed against them. They are supervising your transition as majority owner. They cannot fire you. They cannot stop the lawful operation of the organization. And most importantly, the codicil explicitly states that their supervision ends immediately upon the involvement of external regulatory bodies. Meaning if you file that police report or report the tax fraud to the IRS, they lose their supervisory power instantly. But the minute you do that, the organization will be seized for investigation. It will stop operating and all those community art programs you care about, gone. That's the stability they are supposed to maintain. It was a stalemate. If I reported them, it'd save the organization from theft, but it'd kill the mission. If I kept quiet, they would bleed it dry eventually, but the mission would survive for now. So what do I do?" I asked, feeling that familiar tightness in my chest. Ms. Davis leaned forward. "You fight on 2 fronts. You don't report the fraud immediately. You use the evidence as leverage to push them out, forcing them to resign voluntarily and sign an NDA, thus saving the organization from external investigation. And the second front, you go after the loophole in the codicil." The loophole? Apparently, the supervised visitation clause only applied if the moral conflict was reported by the original trustees within 72 hours of the estate execution. Since they filed their petition right after our board meeting based on my destabilization, the court approved it. But Ms. Davis had a thought. "This codicil was executed at 11:47 a.m. last Tuesday. Was Mr. Harrison truly of sound mind given the timing of his passing?" The counterattack. I spent the next week compiling the real evidence. I wasn't just focused on Denny's expensive suits or Sarah's ski trip. I was focused on Stella's widespread tax fraud and the absolute devastation it would bring to her family if exposed. I needed to break their united front. Stella was the weakest link, paradoxically, because she was running the biggest scheme and her son was directly implicated. Sarah was just petty and Denise was protective of Jason, but Stella had a whole system of sin she was trying to protect. I organized an unscheduled, mandatory one-on-one meeting with Stella on Friday afternoon. I asked Alex to send me an email professionally formatted saying he was my senior compliance consultant and that he needed to review Stella's discretionary fund records now. Stella came into my office looking furious and carrying her massive Bible. "I have no time for these games, Stephen," she snapped, standing rather than sitting. "You are wasting resources. I have a spiritual retreat this weekend. We need to be focused on God's true work." "We are focused on compliance, Stella," I said, putting a printed stack of documents on my desk. These weren't the $5,000 checks. These were screenshots of the public tax filings for 3 separate organizations linked to David Price, her son, all receiving grants from the Good Loop. "This is nearly $150,000 in diverted funds over 3 years, I stated calmly. "This isn't just internal fraud, Stella. This is federal crime territory. The IRS gets very upset when nonprofits are used to fund personal enterprises." Stella's face didn't change, but her hands gripping the Bible turned white at the knuckles. "My son is doing God's work. He is a missionary. He's running a shell company from a P.O. box in rural Ohio," I corrected gently. "And if this information leaves this office, Stella, David will be facing serious jail time and your name will be on every single legal document. The IRS doesn't care about God's plan, Stella. They care about receipts." The silence was heavier this time. She finally sat down. She looked devastated, not angry. The facade of the religious extremist cracked just enough for me to see the worried mother underneath. You wouldn't, she whispered. You are supposed to be a good person, Stephen. You wouldn't destroy a mother and her son. I am trying to save the good loop, Stella, I said, and I don't want to destroy your family. But this organization is more important than your family's personal savings account. You have two choices. You can resign today, sign an affidavit acknowledging your wrongdoing without specific numbers, and agree to an NDA about your departure, protecting the organization from immediate scandal and outside investigation. Or I report the full $150,000 to the IRS and let them handle David and all three of you. I held my breath. She just stared at the table for a full minute. Then she slowly placed the Bible down. If I resign, the supervised visitation ends, she asked, her voice raspy. For me, yes, and I will delay filing any external report on David's activities provided you sign the NDA and promise never to contact me or the organization again, she signed. The resignation letter was short, but it was everything. She walked out of the office 30 minutes later, never looking back. She just left the Bible on my desk. I immediately emailed Ms. Davis with the signed letter. 1 down, 2 to go. The second confrontation, leverage and ego. The next few days were chaos. Denise and Sarah were freaking out because Stella just vanished. Where is Stella? Did she find a better religious opportunity? Is she at a retreat? Sarah demanded, peering into Stella's empty office like she expected her to materialize from a cloud of incense. Stella resigned, I informed them casually on Monday morning. Effective immediately, she cited personal reasons. Denise practically exploded. She cannot, she is part of the supervisory committee. This invalidates the codicil. The codicil requires all three of you to file the petition for supervision. Ms. Davis confirmed that Stella's absence means the original terms must be renegotiated. I lied again just to see them sweat. Ms. Davis had actually said that if the board shrinks, the court might appoint a neutral party, but bluffing was still free. I scheduled a one-on-one with Sarah O'Brien, parent who compares. Sarah's weakness wasn't jail time, it was reputation. Her entire life was built on Chloe's success and her own perceived prestige. The idea of public shame was her biggest fear. Sarah sashayed into my office, carrying an expensive handbag and a look of practiced annoyance. I don't have time for your amateur theatrics, Stephen. I have to call Chloe to discuss her summer internship at the UN. You know, international relations. I know Sarah, she's very successful. I've seen the photos from Aspen and Napa Valley, I said, putting up a projection on the wall of her Instagram story. Chloe skiing, Chloe drinking wine, all juxtaposed with the corresponding expense reports coded as donor outreach. That's illegal surveillance, Stephen. She hissed, her voice low and furious. It's publicly available information, Sarah. What is illegal is using a nonprofit's funds to pay for your daughter's college vacations. I have receipts for 3 trips and 5 separate instances of fraudulent meal coding, all totaling about $15,000. I clicked to the next slide. It was a projection of the press release I had drafted, announcing her immediate termination due to gross financial impropriety and misuse of charitable funds. The draft named the locations and detailed the expenses. If I file this, Sarah, it will be picked up by the local papers by tomorrow afternoon. Chloe's university might have some questions about her mother's ethics, and your entire social reputation in this city will be destroyed. Remember what you told me last week? How you worried that Mrs. Henderson from the country club was judging your new Mercedes? Imagine how she'll judge you when she reads this. Sarah went silent. She wasn't angry anymore, she was horrified. Her perfect, carefully curated world was crumbling because of my cracked screen phone and a few screenshots. I can pay it back, she stammered. I can write a check right now. It was a misunderstanding. It was fraud, Sarah, and paying it back doesn't undo the legal exposure to the organization. I want your resignation today, and I want an NDA stating you will never discuss your tenure here or this investigation with anyone, ever. Or I send this press release and the spreadsheets to the Aspen Times. She looked genuinely sick. The irony that her obsession with comparison and appearance was what brought her down was not lost on me. She signed, trembling, and walked out without her handbag. She came back for it 5 minutes later, still pale, and sped out of the office. 2 down. The final showdown. Mama's boy money. Denise Ahmed, Mama's boy, was the final boss. She had been here 15 years, felt utterly entitled to the money, and was the most aggressive. She also had the simplest motive, protecting her 38-year-old son, Jason. I knew money alone wouldn't move her. She needed to know that Jason was truly at risk. Denise was still supervising my life, but now alone, which was hilariously inefficient. She spent the entire day glaring at me through her office door and demanding updates on reports I hadn't even started. You're falling behind, Stephen. This organization is going to fail because you are too young and dramatic, she yelled across the office. I waited until 4:58 p.m., 2 minutes before official closing time, and emailed her a single PDF document titled, Jason Ahmed Potential Exposure. She stomped into my office immediately, throwing the door open. What is this, Stephen? You're threatening my son. I'm not threatening him, Denise. I'm presenting facts, I said, folding my hands calmly on the desk. You see that $347 suit purchase, the Bloomingdale's receipts, the multiple $200 cash withdrawals coded as petty cash, she bristled. Those were gifts, they were earned. They were expenses disguised as legitimate business costs. And here is the problem, Jason accepted those gifts. He knew they were paid for by the nonprofit card or with funds intended for the community. That makes him an accessory to the fraud. He knowingly benefited. I clicked the mouse and put up a screenshot of the check register on the wall. Here is the total, $18,400 in unauthorized spending linked directly to Jason or his benefit over the last 18 months. That's a felony, Denise. And since he lives with you and you were the primary operations officer, when I file this report, I have to include everything. I took a deep breath. Stella and Sarah are gone. The supervision is over. I am the sole person standing between you, Jason, and the law. If I file this report, Jason goes down with you. He loses his job, he loses his potential artisanal cheese dreams, and he goes to jail. Denny's eyes filled with tears, which shocked me. She wasn't yelling, she was just hurting. The mama's boy was her entire world. He needs me, Steven. He's fragile. He can't handle this. Then you need to stop protecting him with stolen money, I said firmly. You resign. You sign the NDA, you agree to never speak of the good loop again. I will not report the specific nature of your fraud, and I will code the expenses as miscellaneous unrecoverable funds during the transition audit. Jason is safe. The organization is safe. You go home and you try to teach him what real responsibility looks like. She signed it. She didn't look at me again. She just collected her things and left the office defeated. The chair she left behind was slightly warm. The aftermath and Ms. Chen. It was 5:30 p.m. I sat alone in the conference room staring at the empty seats. It was over. The supervised visitation had lasted exactly 2 weeks and 3 days. I felt nauseous, relieved, and totally exhausted. I hadn't slept properly in a month. I hadn't filed a single KPI report. I hadn't even checked my mail. The next morning I called Ms. Chen, the lawyer who delivered the will. This time she answered. Ms. Chen, Steven Fitzgerald. The situation has been resolved. Denise Ahmed, Sarah O'Brien, and Stella Price have resigned and relinquished all claims and supervisory duties. The organization is stable. There was a pause. Well, that was faster than I anticipated, Steven. Tell me, Ms. Chen, I asked, the chronic worrier returning, needing to understand. Why the codicil? Why the supervised visitation clause? Mr. Harrison knew they were stealing. Why give them one last shot at power? Ms. Chen sighed, and it sounded genuine. Mr. Harrison revised his will not because he trusted them, but because he trusted you. He knew you were meticulous, Steven. He knew you were a worrier, but he also knew you lacked the confidence and ruthlessness to confront them. He needed you to feel cornered. He needed you to find your resolve. She paused. The codicil was a test. He gave them the illusion of power, knowing that if you didn't fight back and win, they would destroy the organization anyway. He gave you the necessary pressure to stop being an intern and start being an executive director. I leaned back in my chair, staring at Stella's massive abandoned Bible, a test. He put my inheritance and the future of the nonprofit on the line just to force me to grow up. NGL, that's insane, but it worked. Life now, 1 month later, so it's been 4 weeks since the resignations. I'm typing this update from my own desk at the Good Loop, and I finally have the Wi-Fi password. I am officially the executive director, and frankly, I am terrifyingly good at it. When you spend your entire life worrying about the $43.67 grocery bill, managing a $3 million nonprofit budget, while stressful, feels strangely grounded. I'm operating with total transparency, hired a new accountant who looks perpetually stressed, a good sign, and we are currently recruiting new board members who actually care about art programs instead of personalized luxury goods. Alex, my best friend, has been instrumental. He helped me hire a cheap part-time bookkeeper and set up a triple-check system for all expenditures. He still calls me 5 times a day to ask if I've eaten a vegetable. The organization is slowly healing. We had a brief moment of internal gossip when the trio just vanished, but I spun a narrative about a necessary restructuring that involved moving towards a leaner, more focused leadership team. Everyone bought it. The community is happy we're stable. I'm still chronically worried, but the focus has shifted. I worry about the Q3 tax filing. I worry about funding for the new literacy program. I worry less about the rent because for the first time in my life I have a salary that actually covers it plus a small cushion. I did something I never would have done before. I moved out of apartment 3B, which was damp and expensive, and found a clean, bright, much smaller place for $900 a month. It's a shoebox, but it's mine. The move was a logistical nightmare. I hired a moving truck and then realized I didn't know how to drive a moving truck, but I got it done. I still think about the trio sometimes. Denise called me last week. I didn't answer. She left a voicemail crying. She said Jason was having trouble adjusting to reality and was having a hard time finding a job because no one appreciates his unique talents. She tried to Venmo request me $20 for lunch money. I blocked her number. Petty? Yes. Necessary for my mental health? Absolutely. Sarah has already leveraged her connections to land a new gig running PR for a minor hedge fund. I saw her at the gym last week. She was on the elliptical looking right through me. I heard her loudly discussing Chloe's second internship at the UN. She will never change. And Stella, I saw a post on a local community board that the path of true light had suddenly dissolved due to lack of divine funding. I kept my word. I didn't file the tax fraud report, but I think the universe, or maybe just basic financial reality, caught up with her. I did mail her Bible back though. I didn't want that kind of heavy energy in my office. I am not cured of being a chronic worrier. Yesterday I freaked out because I thought I left the stove on. I didn't. But now when that anxiety hits, I use it. I channel it into checking the spreadsheets twice. I use it to preemptively solve problems. The worry hasn't gone away, but the dread has lessened. The biggest realization? Mr. Harrison didn't leave me an organization. He left me a crucible. He forced me to realize that being a good person doesn't mean being a doormat. It means protecting the good things fiercely, even if it makes you sick with fear. I still have bad days. I still stress eat talenti. But yesterday I successfully negotiated a $5,000 grant renewal, and then Alex and I went out for celebratory pizza. When I looked at the bill, I didn't worry about the total. I just paid it. That's growth, NGL. Anyway, that's the update. I'm the new boss. I saved the nonprofit from the mama's boy, the parent who compares, and the religious zealot, and I'm still trying to figure out how to drive a moving truck. I'm fine, I think. We'll update if anything else insane happens, but honestly, I hope it doesn't. My heart can't take it.